comes to horror, there aren't always heroes, but when there are, they tend to come out swinging, giving the big nasty a taste of their own medicine, and often only narrowly walking away from whatever hellish bloodbath they've had to endure. But all heroes aren't created equal, at least not in our memories. In fact, some pretty serious heroes from across the years have been sidelined for bigger stars and bigger monsters. Others have been buried with their movies in the oversaturated horror canon. They are sometimes underdogs, other times sidekicks, and often the only survivor, but never a face you think of when someone says horror hero. Now, we have already done a video on this topic, but we found so many more to talk about. So, with that in mind, I'm Ellie for What Culture, here with 10 more horror movie heroes everyone forgets about. Number 10. Robert Morse, Alien 3. The unsung hero of David Fincher's Alien 3 comes in the unlikely form of prison inmate Robert Morse. After Ellen Ripley crash lands on Fiorina 161, a wasteland planetoid inhabited by inmates turned monks from the planet's abandoned maximum security prison, she is brought face to face with her worst nightmare once again as another plague of xenomorphs descends, and the remaining men are picked off one by one. Down to a last few inmates, it is up to Ripley and her unlikely companions to ensure the creatures don't get off planet and back to Earth. Enter Robert Morse. He's certainly a handful to begin with, full of spite and a self-centered worldview, yet by the end of the film he is instrumental in Ripley's plan, and not only succeeds in keeping the xenomorph out of evil Corp Weyland-Yutani's mitts, but is the last man standing, despite a shot in the leg as the credits roll. Number 9. Maureen Epps, Ghost Ship. Considered to be one of the most underrated horror movies of the 21st century by its tight cult fanbase, despite repeated critical thrashings, Ghost Ship takes us to a distant region of the Bering Sea, where a salvage crew discover the remains of a Titanic-esque passenger liner that went missing over 40 years ago. And once on board, the team discover the vessel's treasures, secrets, and deadly inhabitants. Sure, it's not an original premise, but it provides the opportunity for some serious thrills and chills, as ghosts good and bad make themselves known. At the centre of it all is salvage crew Captain Sean Murphy, or so it seems until he loses the plot and is sidelined and then killed in favour of Maureen Epps. Arguably one of the all-stars from the ranks of horror's most overlooked final girls, Morin is a badass with a heart of gold, whose smarts keep her afloat while her crewmates are drowned and defeated all around. She is instrumental in uncovering the mystery of why the boat sank in the first place and who the demonic spirit behind it all is, as well as, blowing it to Kingdom Come in the finale. Number 8. Dwayne Bradley, Basket Case. Despite it sitting comfortably amongst some of the weirdest, strangest uglies the 80s had to offer, Troll, The Thing, The Fly, you name it, Basket Case is often overlooked. The film unpacks the cautionary tale of Dwayne Bradley, a man who, in the years following an unwanted surgery that separated the pair, keeps his deformed twin Belial in, a basket, to hide and protect him from the world. Seeking vengeance against the doctors who parted him and his brother, Dwayne goes on something of a crusade against those responsible. The film treads a fine line between humour and terror, balancing both on Dwayne's shoulders for the most part. He manages Belial's jealousy and resentment against his own feelings of remorse in a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde double act, and while Dwayne ultimately fails in his mission to keep his brother hidden and safe, that only makes him more of the flawed hero we are instinctively drawn to. Number 7. Quinn Brenner, Insidious Chapter 3. Insidious has once again become a Patrick Wilson vehicle, with recent franchise ender The Red Door. Taking up the mantle from the real MVP of the whole series, Insidious's answer to Obi-Wan, Elise. Overshadowed by not only Elise and series poster boy Josh Lambert, but Elise's gophers, the ever-hilarious Specs and Tucker, Quinn Brenner never gets the recognition she deserves. Hailing from the oft-overlooked Insidious Chapter 3, Quinn is a previous client of Elise's who is brought face-to-face with her own demons and survives. Showing up as an apparently run-of-the-mill victim, unrelated to the original Lambert family, Quinn demonstrates her worth by the film's conclusion by repelling the Further, the eerie place between places where malevolent spirits linger, and defeating the film's Man Who Can't Breathe without Elise's help. Truth be told, not a whole lot of what little good takes place in the film, including the pairing of Elise with her future colleagues Specs and Tucker, could be achieved without Quinn's involvement. Number 6. Crystal May Creasey, The Hunt. When a group of working-class strangers wake up in a field, neither knowing where they are or how they came to be there, it's not long before things shift up a gear and the bloodshed begins. Hunted for sport by wealthy elites, the group turn out to be all but useless at defending themselves, except for Crystal, who has a particular set of skills she picked up in Afghanistan. Unfortunately, Crystal's take-no-names badass rampage and Betty Gilpin's performance were overshadowed by the film's high-concept premise, which ultimately failed to deliver. Its continuously delayed release date and the political backlash for what many consider a dubious moral stance. Why? Well, the Hunted are predominantly God's honest Trump supporters, conspiracy theorists, and the like, and the Hunters liberals. Overall, the movie courts an anti-liberal, pro-conservative tone, while failing to address the fact that many of the tropes the elite liberals in the film conform to are actually right-wing. Nonetheless, Crystal is a hero not to be messed with, and it would be a welcome return to see her in something with less politics and more gore. Number 5. Rod Williams, Get Out. The man, the myth, the legend, Rod Williams provides the comedic backbone to Get Out, a film that, if left unchecked, could have become pretty darned harrowing. You know, even more so than it already is. Jordan Peele's first in what is turning out to be a fruitful line of horror movies puts young black photographer Chris Washington on a collision course with his girlfriend's uber-white family, the Armitages, in a weekend away that could make or break the rest of his life. The homely little family seek to implant their brains in black people's bodies so they can live their lives all over, and he's next on the menu. But it's who Chris leaves behind who winds up being one of the unsung heroes of the entire piece: Rod. TSA agent, comic relief, and Chris's best friend, Rod is the voice of reason, bringing sense to the decidedly weird situation at the Armitages and cautioning his guy to get out of there ASAP. When he recognises a conspiracy in the works and the police won't listen to him, Rod goes out there himself, tracks Chris down, and whisks his best bud out of harm's way. Number 4. Scott, Hostel Part 3. Everyone remembers Eli Roth's Hostel series, positioned as it was as one of the mainstream forerunners of the whole torture porn movement. As for its heroes, most of us would have a hard time even recognising their faces, much less remembering their names. And this is doubly so for Hostel Part 3, a straight-to-video sequel that arrived well after the splatter peak, sans Roth. It may feel like the Hostel films are populated by undeserving gap-year types, whose main function is to act as meat puppets for our gory fantasies, but the third film offers an interesting variation on this model. Scott starts out as a run-of-the-mill, undeserving type with a vague moral code, partying hard in Vegas but drawing the line at any actual face time with a couple of hookers. One thing leads to another, and soon Scott finds himself in the shady world of the so-called elite hunting club, who abduct the hapless to provide macabre thrills to rich businessmen. Little about Scott's initial suffering is of note, but once he gets his escape on, he shows us a few tricks we haven't seen before. Defeating his turncoat best friend in front of a paying audience, Scott requisitions an elite club tattoo, uses it to escape, calls in the cops, and brings the whole enterprise down. But the real kicker is when he returns from the dead at the film's conclusion, burnt and furious and ready for some much-needed vengeance. Number 3. Ellie Turner, Last Night in Soho. Edgar Wright has spent much of his UK-based career dallying in and remixing classic horror setups. Think Shaun of the Dead's zomcomming of Dawn of the Dead or Hot Fuzz's close relationship with The Wicker Man. And after a few years stateside making some big, shiny action features, he returned to cleave another name in the horror canon with Last Night in Soho. Ellie Turner is an art student who moves out of backwoods Cornwall and into the big city to study at the London College of Fashion. Here, however, her fascination with the 60s takes her farther into the past than she planned, and she finds herself time-travelling through the adventures of Sandy Collins, aspiring singer, coincidental prostitute, and serial killer. Because she is positioned as a surrogate for the audience, guiding us into the strangeness of 1960s London, it can often be easy to forget about Ellie, especially when the spectacle of Sandy and Matt Smith's Jack carry the film along so stylishly. But Ellie is the heart and soul of the film, uncovering the adult Sandy's dark deeds, namely punters under the floorboards, and providing the path to the older woman's redemption. Number 2. Dan Kane, Reanimator. Stuart Gordon's Reanimator may be something of a cult classic of the 80s horror scene, but few of us remember much beyond crazed anti-hero Herbert West and the gory but frequently hilarious special effects. Nevertheless, from the ashes of our memory rises an unsung hero in Dan Kane, who is the film's audience surrogate and main protagonist. A medical student who takes Herbert in as a housemate in order to make rent, Dan gets a whole lot more than he bargained for, finding himself helplessly drawn into West's experiments reanimating the dead. When the end of the film rolls around, Dan has lost pretty much everything that means anything to him, including his education, his pet cat, his medical license, and his girlfriend Megan, who is strangled by the living dead in the film's finale. Dan is the all-American classic hero turned inside out, but that's precisely why we love him, providing the counterpoint to West's madness alongside just enough brain and brawn to see him through. Number 1. Lex Woods, Alien vs Predator. Alien vs Predator may not be everyone's cup of tea, and it is certainly many people's least favourite entry of either franchise. But the film has plenty of killer moments, and it's great seeing two of the universe's most fearsome horror figures face off against each other. Everything gets off to a foreboding start when Charles Bishop Wayland, of obvious lineage, funds an Antarctic expedition to find a mysterious source of heat buried under the ice. Environmental technician Lex Woods leads the more cognitive aspects of the expedition, driving the cautious exploration of a mysterious pyramid Wayland's team uncover. But once the labyrinthine pieces start moving, they get more than they bargained for as xenomorphs are unleashed from the deep and a squad of predators come from off-planet to hunt them. With the humans caught right in the heart of the conflict, few make it out alive. But despite the mounting odds, Lex stands out as a decisive leader and warrior, going toe-to-toe with the alien invaders, defeating the Xenomorph Queen, and even earning the respect of the Predators, something we have only seen happen a couple of other times on screen before.